today. I know there's been some problems with parking and stuff, so it's good we're all here. I have apologies from Councillors Moss, Murphy, Renard and Charity. Emergency evacuation procedures. We don't have any fire alarm testing scheduled today. What do you want to advise?
Could I interject, Chairman? In the event that a very unlikely fire alarm, obviously the lift won't be working, so one doesn't want to inconvenience the firefighters. Would you be prepared to give me a fines lift? Yes, please.
Yes, but whether we both make it down the line, not sure.
Just on that, should anyone need assistance, we will help anyone evacuate the building. The rendezvous point is in the car park, and if you've got a member of staff who will meet you there, just please be advised this is an operational fire station. There will be people moving around today.
Thank you, Paula. And yet it is the slowest lift in the world, so. We don't have any declarations of interest advised before the meeting. Are there any to discuss? No, brilliant. And there's no public access. So, Chair's business. This fire committee meeting is taking place at Nailsea Fire Station, and we are recording the meeting for the public to view on the Fire Authority YouTube channel. So, I'm going to ask members to introduce themselves first. As usual, I lean to the left, as Richard knows. So I'm Councillor Paul Boggin. I had to look at my nameplate there. I'm still in holiday work, apologies. I represent Hartlepool with Water in Bristol. And
Company Councillor for Norway, Bristol.
Good morning, I'm Robert Payne, Councillor for West Bishop and West Central.
sorry. I think maybe you should just repeat that video thing.
I'm Robert Payne, Councillor for West Bishop and West Central, and also as a
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Barson, representing South Merchant Shires and Young Union Texas.
Dan Thomas, Councillor for Conway, Paxton, and Somerset Council.
Councillor Richard Eddie Bishops with Bristol, but as members know, I prefer to be not Somerset.
Councillor John Hardy's representing Emerson's Green in the province of South Gloucester.
Thank you, and I'll now ask officers and other people in the room to introduce themselves, and I'll go start with Shazia.
Shazia Dyer, Deputy Monitoring Officer to this interim.
Morning everyone, I'm the former Director of Public Services and Interim Monitoring Officer. Good morning, I'm Verity Trescott, Statutory Finance Officer.
Morning, Emma Bowen, Democratic Services.
Good morning, Lee Rogers, Group Manager,
Efficiency and Savings. Morning, John Mayer, Station Manager, Efficiency and Savings.
Morning members and colleagues, Richard Welch, Assistant Chief Fire Officer.
Good morning all, Paula Lyons, Assistant Chief Fire Officer.
Thanks everyone, and we'll ask other people to introduce themselves if they've presented reports. Can I remind everyone please to use the microphones when you're speaking, and remember to turn them off when you've finished. It's important microphones are turned on when speaking to ensure that all discussion is captured on the recording of the meeting. So, next part of the Chair's business is the HMIC FRS update. So, following the fourth revisit to the service, His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary and Fire and Rescue Services have published a letter confirming they have discharged Avon Fire and Rescue Service accelerated cause of concern relating to site-specific risk information and remaining associated recommendations. They also closed more of the recommendations for prevention. They confirmed the service have made welcome progress across the areas they inspected, and the CFO has thanked everyone involved in the revisit and work to date. The Continuous Improvement Manager will give a further update in their report. I know Dan attended the FPOG meeting very kindly in my place while I was travelling to Odessa. Do you want to just give us a couple of words on that?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was very happy to attend and understand what you're doing, some sterling work for the service in Odessa. It was a very positive meeting. HYC was impressed, I'd say, by the presentation and the progress this fire authority fire service is making. Yeah, I'm full confidence that we will be making that ones being able to engage with again 2026. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And I think what you said earlier was we're getting there. And I think that's definitely the case. It is a journey, but we're quite a long way down the road now, I believe. And speaking of being a long way down the road, we just had a trip. Thank you, but segue. Trip to Odessa. I've been given something to update people on the trip, but I think I'll just ad-lib. Yeah, it was fantastic. It took us 6 days to drive across 8 countries. As I said to Richard earlier, we crossed the Carpathian Mountains in Transylvania. We stopped at fire stations on the way. We stayed in Frankfurt, and the biggest fire station I've ever been to in my life. My goodness, I think they had something like 32 bays. So yes, and there's 3 of those in the city, so fair enough. Then we then stayed in Vienna, which was very nice with the Austrian fire service. All of the travel we stayed on camp beds and sleeping bags and stuff to save money. We then stopped in Romania. We had some problems. Apparently all of a sudden the Romanian fire service didn't want to help us, and our planned stop in Cluj-Napoca was cancelled. But we found a very kind, voluntary, self-funded fire station in a Hungarian enclave of Romania, and they gave us the most amazing welcome and hospitality. They had a big barbecue for us and rolled out a small barrel which contained raspberry schnapps. And yes, we enjoyed that. And then we ploughed on until we got to the border. A couple of the lads came along, Matt and Ralphie, actually to the border with me. We met up with the Ukrainian firefighters, and Ralphie got to swap shirts. He found somebody just as big as him. So yeah, it was brilliant. 2,033 miles, and then I carried on with the engines into Odessa itself. We presented them on Odessa's birthday, which was brilliant, on September the 2nd. And they've now been sent out to places they're going to be used. One's going to a small village on the outskirts of Odessa, which didn't have any cover before, and the other one's going to a military hospital. So yeah, they're very, very pleased. They were so pleased they gave me a medal. But yeah, I'm hoping to go back next year, but I'll keep it as I tell you as we go along. So enough about that. Voting today will be by a show of hands. I'll ask for any votes against, any abstentions, and any votes for. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6 is the minutes of the Ordinary Policy and Resources Committee on the 31st of July, the confidential minutes of the Ordinary Meeting of Policy and Resources Committee on the 31st of July, confidential minutes of the Policy and Resources Stage 2 Internal Dispute Resolution Procedure, IDRP, held on the 5th of August. If you have any comments about any of the confidential parts of the minutes, we will have to go into closed session at the end to approve them. But otherwise, we can dispense with them here. I'd like to propose that they are a fair and accurate record. Can I have a second that? Thank you very much, Dan. Okay, I'll sign those and we pass them on to Shazia. So, on to the substantial business. Number 7, efficiencies and savings. We've got done that today. Lee and John.
Yes, good morning. Lee Rogers from Efficiencies and Savings, and my colleague John Mayer from Efficiencies and Savings, here to present the Efficiency Savings paper, which is page 19 of your packs. So looking at the summary, so section 1, we looked to update PRC on the efficiency and savings programmes for the financial year of 25 to 26 and provide an update on the progress of the 7 efficiency and savings options that were presented to the Financial Authority on the 14th of February 2025. So moving on to section 2.1, the Policy Resource Committee is asked to scrutinise the progress on the 7 years options against predicted savings. So we can move on to section 3.2, which gives an overview table of the options that were presented earlier in the year, and also onto 4.1, which gives you an appendix and a further breakdown of those savings in monetary value. What I will do is go through each one of the savings options to give you an update of exactly where we are and what the mini questions on those areas. So if we start off on 4.2, which is officer day cover, that utilises the day duty officers to provide cover to ride fire engines when a shortfall in crew has been identified. So we've developed a booking system that allows officers to book onto this programme, and we've had some issues getting this programme started due to requalification. So these requalification issues have now been resolved with the L&D team providing the relevant training. We have had some issues around availability and recalibrating work streams, and we have been working with relevant managers and local personnel to overcome these issues. The whole of this section is monitored by a steering group, and that then reports into governance from SLT with any issues that we can't overcome. So moving on to section 4.3, which is crew-based training. So this option looks to deliver training courses at fire station as opposed to individuals attending away from stations. This is outperforming currently due to the expansion into other courses, and the courses that have been identified have meant that this has been a successful so far, and again this has been monitored by the steering group, and the current RAD rating for this is green. Apologies, going back to the officer day cover, the current RAD rating of that is amber. So moving on to detached duties, section 4.4, this option looks to reduce the whole time detached duty payment by 1/3. So we had to basically take a concept into a system, which meant there was some delay in getting this started, and the actual go live date on this was the 1st of August. So because this was a direct impact on firefighters and operational staff's money, we had to make sure this engagement was impact assessed and people were consulted how we're going to do this. We consulted and worked with the FBU on this one, and considered staff feedback and engagement right the way throughout, which meant that there was a delay in getting this started. The first month's savings exceeded the predicted savings, and the current RAD rating is amber. So moving on to 4.5, which is standby movements. This option looks to reduce unnecessary standby movements across the service. Again, this start date was was put back to the 1st of August. Due to this being a new system, we had to work with the fire control room and implement training in the fire control room area. We had to look at a new system and implement that new system to make this option work. The first month's savings did not hit the predicted savings, so this current rating is red. I will add on this one that August was a particularly busy month for us. so therefore that will increase those standby movements, therefore decreasing the savings. The initial predictions for September looks like that increase. That will, the savings would increase as our incidents have gone down. So moving on to 4.6, which is drone mobilisations. This option looks to reduce unnecessary on-call staff payments when mobilising a drone to Portishead. So again, this one started on the 1st of August, and this was a brand new process that had some initial outlay and cost, and we had to work with the fire control room and our communications team to get this system up and running to work. We are very new data on this one, and again this is overseen by the steering group, and we will look at that data collection to see where we can make improvements in those areas moving forward, these savings. As the current savings and the current RAB rating is red due to the fact that we did not hit the predicted savings in the first month. So moving on to 4.7, which is Green Book establishments. So initially this was looking to reduce 2 posts, and it was decided that 1 post would be removed with a predicted savings of £10,000. This has actually been filled by temporary contact at this point, and that is due to the delay in the expansion of the fireworks project, which we are still working on. This element is still in amber due to the savings not to be realised till January, and we will constantly review the temporary contract and understand whether that is still required post January. Also, if the savings aren't made in this area, we could make savings at areas within the service, and I'll probably hand over to Verity just to update on that.
I'll probably talk about it a little bit in my paper later as well. When we're looking at the revenue budget, obviously these savings here we're looking at mostly affecting employee costs, so payments that are made to staff, or we're trying to kind of control those. We've obviously got other elements of our revenue budget, so part of what we're doing as well is making sure that we're controlling costs everywhere, so looking at non-pay costs. So if we are struggling to achieve some of these, particularly in this Green Book example, we will be looking to make sure we can offset that with savings in other areas.
Yeah, thank you, Verity. So moving on to Grey Book establishment then. So this option seeks to reduce Grey Book establishment by 4 posts. This was based on firefighter pay rates. The Senior Leadership Board approved a reduction of 3 managerial posts, equating to the savings of 205,000. This involved the removal of posts from incident command of 1 watch manager and 1 crew manager, and 1 crew manager from site-specific risk information. The current RAG rating of this is amber, and just as Verity alluded to, we may need to pick that up in over-prediction or over-delivering on other areas within the separate options, or for other areas within the service. So moving on to key considerations. As I mentioned, the programme is governed internally by a steering group consisting of membership right across the service, and the steering group reports directly into SLT with any issues that we can't solve. The risks are linked to the corporate risk register, CR 19.2, failure to plan and deliver a medium-term financial plan. If we move to 6.2, the overall programme of the status of the programme is amber, and again, could I just ask Verity to give a bit more detail on that?
I think we're looking at it in a whole. So for this particular thing, we obviously just see there's a few elements that either started late or aren't necessarily delivering exactly what we expect at this point in time. So rating it amber in isolation, but again, we're looking, when we come through from a finance perspective, balancing the budget as a whole. So we'll be looking across all of the income and the expenditures to make sure that we can balance that budget. And again, we'll see all those lines in my paper later on this morning.
Thank you. So moving on to section 7.1 and the legal and policy implications. This is directly related to the statutory requirement to set a balanced budget, and the section 8 background papers, all the links are there if needed. And that is the end of my presentation. Welcome any questions.
Thank you very much. Got a few questions. Obviously members are... Microphone turned itself off. Obviously members are used to a difficulty of managing to set a balanced budget these days. Going to 4.2, what's the date cover? It says that challenges resulting in officers being unable to provide the required date per month. What exactly does that mean? Sorry.
Yes, that looked at availability, and looked at work streams of those officers, and that's something we've been working with those local managers to ensure that there is enough scope in their working weeks and months to attend that one day a month.
So going forward, do you foresee that to be a continuous problem, or?
No, I think that this is monitored through the steering group, as I mentioned, and that is then escalated to SLT if we have any more issues, and we feel that we are beginning to address those now, and it is a very small proportion of that.
Thanks, that's brilliant. How has that gone down with staff, basically?
I think overall it's been positive. I think that our staff members understand the situation we're in, and how we need to adapt and work differently moving forward. We have spoken to people individually that have some reservations, hesitations, and I believe now that we are in a really strong position.
Fabulous, thank you. 4.5, the standalone movement. What was the original date with these to go live?
Yes, it was all the 1st of April.
Brilliant, thank you. And 4.7, the temporary contract. I'm presuming that's unfortunately at a premium. Generally, temporary contracts we tend to pay more. Is that the case?
We may have to ask Paul to answer on that one.
Thank you for your question. As Lee said, this is a situation we're reviewing. This was whole part of the project was based on something called Firewatch. It was a bit of a technological solution to some of our crewing, but the Firewatch project hasn't come to fruition yet, so we're still working on that. So in terms of the nature of the position and temporary and how many people are needed in resource planning, it's linked in with a review of the people services restructure, which if you would have seen in your comms has gone live, I believe, this month. So it's a bit of a system work, maybe the one acknowledged in isolation.
I think it's pretty. Thank you for that. And final question from me. The grey book establishment, with the reduction of the 3 managerial posts equating to 205k, does that mean we're actually only reducing the grey book establishment by 3 posts there?
That's correct, yes.
Fabulous, okay, well, a bit good news. Okay, I'll open up for questions. Richard?
Lee, many thanks to your presentation. Firstly, crew-based training. I'm pleased that it's actually produced better savings than we hoped, although I note the caveat you put in your para. I can read the appendix to the savings to date. Roughly, are you able to give an anticipated saving overall in the year? Just so we can understand whether that might actually address some of the shortcomings under the other heads.
John, what's up? So a lot of the crew-based training will be booked in, so it's pretty consistent each month. The RTAC courses, which is the biggest saving, which is the trauma training, they're booked in pretty consistently every month, so that saving should pretty stay in the month.
So are you able to estimate an annual additional saving?
Not at this exact one, but if you've got it on the website.
And you already answered the question of the chairman without that understanding in the past that the savings should have gone live on the 1st of April rather than the 1st of August. There are 2 others which came into effect on the 1st of August. When were they planned to go live and what's the reason they were late?
Yes, all these options were due to go live on the 1st of April. The ones that we're talking about, so detached duty, standby removals and drone mobilisation, all required systems, new systems we put in place. And I think it's taking that concept and putting that into a system is what's taking the time and the delay. There was some consultation around some of the, with staff around some of the issues that we were facing and putting those things in place to get them up and running, and that's what caused the delay.
Thanks, Richard. Rob?
Yeah, thank you. Sean Burrow, you're right. I'm just briefly interested in this drone utilisation one. Have you, or has anybody in the fire service done any benchmarking with other services that are using drones in a similar manner, like, I don't know, maybe police, maybe search and rescue, anything like that? And have you actually thought about utilising their systems? I hesitate to use the word plagiarism, but it's a good one. Something that's already been done to our benefit then, so we're going to have to do better work.
Yeah, I think I haven't specifically benchmarked against other services, but I do understand how the police model works, and that is a totally different model to what we've got. And when we brought this into the service, this is what the business case and the research showed to be the best model for us to work to. And that's not to say that will be reviewed in the future. The drones only have a certain amount of life, so we will need to look at how they operate and the system that we run to do that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just a sense out of that as well. So what we have taken to other services, they're going into selective mobilise, which is something we have done as a service before, which is what has been initialised for this drone mobilisation, to try and reduce that. So rather than turn like the whole station and a drone incident, we now selective mobilise the required people, which is something other services have done, and we've taken that from that.
Thank you. And you mentioned that drones only have a certain life, but if they are getting towards the end, do let me know. I know someone that might be able to utilise them.
Let me know first.
Thank you. Robert?
I just wanted to say that overall I find it slightly frustrating that when we find it really difficult to find these savings, and then we've agreed to go ahead with these ones on the basis that we're going to achieve a certain level of savings, and now we find that we're not making these savings as soon as are running short. So that means that we're going to have to find further savings elsewhere, and it's just become more and more impossible, isn't it, Becky?
It's certainly not an easy task. Versa, did you want to say anything on that, maybe?
I think the thing with these things, yes, it's frustrating that they take longer and they're maybe more difficult for us to kind of realise than we hoped. The other thing we need to think about is the numbers that are in this paper don't necessarily reflect exactly what we see in the revenue budget numbers, because a good example is something like the officer day cover, assuming that each time an officer works on a station, it avoids a level of overtime. The reality is we can't track that in isolation, so any movement in overtime, we can't say there's a reduction because it's specifically for that reason, because there's so many other reasons that we might be using overtime or detached duties and other things. So the numbers don't directly align, which causes some of the confusion as well, because we can't track them in that way. I think the thing with these savings, we want to achieve around 505, even if it takes us a little bit longer to do that this year, we don't fully reach it. We need that to help us balance the budget next year, because these will be recurring savings. So whilst it is frustrating, we need to continue and kind of work a way to make sure we manage the budget elsewhere to kind of offset that, unfortunately.
Thanks, Verity. And Richard has something to say as well.
Yeah, just to reassure members really, as Verity said, we will realise these savings. It might take us a bit longer, but there's others that are overperforming, which will help us out. But also, just because we've identified these savings, we've only stopped there. I've had a conversation with the Chief Forester in the last hour where we've identified some further savings. So we are always looking for further savings and identify them quite regularly actually. So we are working continuously to keep improving on this. I'm confident that we will make these savings within the time period we're given.
Well, thank you. I think I said something about just to beat me to it. It's just to reassure you that this is one programme in isolation. Efficiency in the Savings Life is ongoing, and as you know, we'll be bringing a paper to you in November, which we could discuss further then. But I think it's just that reassurance. This is continuous. We've got systems in place to monitor what we're doing and track these. And I think from a cultural perspective as well, we are acting upon lessons learned. And actually, though some of these are taking a little bit longer to implement, it's because we want to do them properly. We want that engagement. We want to make sure their data, their impact assessed. And actually, by doing that, I think it should give the assurance that they're going to work in the future rather than rushing into things and having to start again.
Yeah. Thanks. Robert, did you want to come back on that? The Chief and I have also got a meeting fairly soon with the MP for Bristol East, whose name escapes me for a second. And we will be lobbying, obviously, as we've done every time we meet any MP, about this multi-year settlement, because obviously, again, in terms of planning, it would make things a lot easier. But as you know, Robert, I mean, it's very similar to the council budgets, and sometimes it's robbing Peter to pay Paul, but hopefully these savings will be realised going forward. Raj.
Thank you, Chair. Talking further to Councillor's observations, part of this number 4 in the financial implications in Appendix 1 presents a table showing status of each option and is signal to date before this user relations. I mean, just above there is a table that shows the basically the savings of £500,000. But I think these are indicative figures, they're not exact figures. That's what I want to establish here. And also, I think you've got 8, you've divided them into 8 different categories basically. Only one of them, 4.3, shows green. It means the task has been achieved on that. Is that right or not? Can you confirm that? And on the other 2, we are still in the right area. And another 3 or 4 are still under. So it means you need more work to do and more money needed to do that. So that money is going to hit the reserves, I suppose.
The way that it's been rated is purely directly against the predicted savings. So anything in green is over what we predicted so far. Anything in amber is under, and red we are significantly under, and with a chance of not achieving those savings in those areas. But as we've stated, some of them are overperforming. The early indications on standby movements suggest that will overperform as well. So we will look to balance it by some of the overperforming ones.
Thank you.
Any further? Excuse me, on statement.
Oh,
sorry.
yeah, I just add a reassurance to that as well. So the steering groups that we set up where we scrutinise these figures every month, we look at the root causes of why some are falling a little bit behind in the action amounts to key stakeholders to look at getting them back on track for what we can do to realise those things. We should produce them. Yeah.
Yeah, I can come in on kind of your comment around whether they're kind of indicative numbers. A lot of these numbers are built on estimates or on a set of assumptions around. So, for example, the drain mobilisation number, although that's relatively small, will be built on assumptions around the number of people that turn out every time the drain needs to be used and stuff like that to generate a saving based on reducing that turnout and things like that. So it all depends on what happens in reality, but then they are based on some assumptions, based on sensible assumptions, but that's why in reality we don't necessarily see exactly the same thing.
Any other questions? No. Okay, so the recommendations are that we scrutinise the progress of the 7 ENS options against predicted savings, and I think we've done that quite comprehensively, so thanks very much for that. If you guys wanted. Okay, so moving on to agenda item 8, which is continuous improvement, transformation, close down report, and Ian is going to present on this one. And if you could introduce yourself as well at the start, please, Ian. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Ian Potter, I'm the Continuous Development Manager. The paper before you today is the regular update on what we investigated at our HMI, ran through inspection action plans and the spotlight and misconduct reports that were published subsequently. Since we last met, we've had a revisit from HMI to look at 2 of the 3 causes of concern. So that was the risk, information and prevention causes of concern. Just in terms of some highlights from that revisit, we had some very positive feedback from them around our governance arrangements, the risk register, our action planning, and keeping staff informed of what's going on. In terms of the risk information cause of concern, when they came in, we had 4 open recommendations. I'm very pleased to report that they've now closed 3 of those, saying that we have made sufficient progress for those to be closed, and also to close the accelerated cause of concern, which again is fantastic news. One of the recommendations has been moved to an area for improvement. So this is around the temporary risk information. And as you may recall, part of the work around this is to cleanse old records from 2 of our systems. I can tell you today that just around 13,000 records have now been cleansed from those 2 databases. And we're now at a point where we've reached business as usual. So going forward, where records need to be cleansed, that will be done on a rolling basis as and when they arise. So good news on that one. That now means that both of our accelerated causes of concern have been closed by HMI. Moving on to prevention, we had 3 remaining recommendations open when they came in to do the revisit. 2 of those recommendations they've now closed, leaving just 1 open. The one that's being left open is around our prevention resources. So they 2 kind of areas for that. One is around the resourcing in our core prevention team, and the other is around whole-time workforce productivity and potential there for us to do more prevention work. So they've kept that recommendation open, and they've kept the cause of concern open as well, despite the other 5 having been closed. But what I can tell you is that there's a lot of work that's taken place to record the activities across all whole-time stations and all watches. And what that's done is it's enabled us to take the opportunity to look at all of the fantastic work that our crews do. Because I think sometimes stuff gets done and doesn't necessarily get recorded and noticed perhaps. But also it's identified, or will identify, some opportunities for us to be able to do additional prevention work, which will then increase the resource in all of our prevention activity. And that's what HMI were looking for, was to do that review. So the recording's taking place, and there'll be follow-on work from that. So that's more good news in terms of that one, only having that 1 recommendation left. At the revisit, they didn't look at the culture cause of concern. That's going to be looked at as part of the full inspection, which I'll come on to very shortly. In terms of our areas for improvement, we have 31 of those from the inspection. And you'll recall at the previous meeting, I showed you a table of how we're now reporting these at recommendation and AFI level rather than that really granular action level. So in Appendix 2, you'll see the table of those AFIs and the recommendations and the status of each of those. Going forward, the recommendation is dropped to an AFI. We could keep in that course of concern, or we could bring it forward into the table for AFIs. I don't think it makes a lot of difference which way we do it. I'll report to you the progress on that regardless. In terms of our internal improvement board, we've had 3 closeout reports that came forward to the July meeting and were signed off as complete, and that's been recorded in our improvement register, and also you'll see that in the tables in that appendix as well. There were 2 closeout reports due at the September meeting, The September meeting didn't take place mainly because those reports had come to the steering group and there was still more work that was needed, particularly around assuring that we fully met what the area for improvement was leaning for. So it shows that our steering group governance process is working to the idea there is we don't get to improvement board until we're pretty confident that it's going to be signed off. And then there's a summary table there at 5.17 which shows the status of all of our AFIs. I think what you'll see from the table in the appendix though is that a lot of them have been set to complete by the owner and they must just go through that assurance process, and of those that are still open, a significant majority of them have most of the work done. But obviously there's more work to do, and I can tell you that those owners are pushing ahead with that work. And we're also just begun a deep dive review of those ahead of our inspections part of preparations, which we're going to talk more about at the next meeting. As you know, the service is in Engage, which is the enhanced monitoring by HMI. So we go to the Fire Performance Oversight Group periodically, and we had our last meeting on the 4th of September. What I can say is it was a very positive meeting. We presented the latest information from our perspective. Our HMI gave their view, and that was very timely because we just had the revisit, so obviously they were able to report on that. And like I say, it was a very positive meeting. The decision was to leave us in Engage, which we'd anticipated. But I think what I'd also say is that whilst we'd like to move out of Engage, being in that Engage enhanced monitoring does mean that we also get enhanced support from the agencies around the table. So, and we're connected here with NFCC and with MHCLG and other sort of colleagues around the table, where they can support us with our improvement journey. There's ongoing engagement with HMI, so we have checkpoint meetings at various periods along the way. I have regular monthly meetings with our service liaison lead at HMI. So I had one only yesterday having this fellow. That was mainly talking about preparations for the inspection that's coming up quite soon. So that's our round 3 inspection outcomes. Moving then on to the Spotlight report, there's one action left there, which is around fire standards and having plans in place. The intention was to take a report to the September Internal Improvement Board, just setting out what those plans are. The meeting didn't take place, so I'll take that to the next meeting, which will be at the beginning of November. The misconduct thematic report, there were 3 actions, 3 recommendations still open with that. They're showing us off track. That's because we didn't complete them by the original date that we set. They are all quite close. One of those is around the probationary policy. There are 2 elements to this. One is to ensure that we capture requirements of the new Employment Rights Bill that is just in the final stages of becoming law, and also to pick up this particular recommendation, which was around grade staff in the probationary period and thinking about our behaviours, values and core code of ethics, being able to dismiss those who fail to meet those required standards. And then the second recommendation is in 2 parts, and that's around being able to move people around where they are promoted. We do those things. There's a little bit of work to do just in terms of setting out in words, if you like, but we already are able to do that, and we do it where necessary, both reactively act proactively as is necessary. So moving just onto the inspection programme, there's a slight change to the timing of the programme. So the document request and work survey window is as stated, so that begins on the 17th of November, but runs for a 4-week period. The inspection itself lasts for 10 weeks. Only 2 of those are on site. Week 1 will commence on the 15th of December, and there's a 2-week break for Christmas and New Year. Week 2 will be the 5th of January. But the key weeks in terms of when the bulk of the work is done is weeks 4 and 6, so they'll be on site with us in those 2 weeks. And that's a mix of desktop reviews, interviews with individuals, focus groups, and they'll go out to our stations and they'll do some reality testing. So yesterday I had the draft timetable come through, so we'll be able to start looking at doing the sort of more detailed planning. And then I've got an engagement meeting with our SLL, HMI at the end of October, where we'll get really into the nitty-gritty of that. And then the other weeks, there's a couple where they do some virtual meetings, and then at the back end of those 10 weeks, it's all of the work they do to gather up everything that they've got and put their all together. And I think it's like another 8 weeks after that, so we'll get our report. So it's a very lengthy process. It kind of begins mid-November and it will finish in the summer, at which point obviously we will then get our due inspection report and see what the outcomes are from that. And I will keep you updated, to maintain with progress on that.
Thank you very much for that, Ian, and thank you for your work on this and the team. And I know certainly Paul has been very involved as well. So thank you all that we are managing the report.
Sorry, there was one. I wasn't sure if you were going to say a question or sorry. The other element, which I mentioned at the previous meeting, was a closed down report. So the quarterly report has been brought to this committee over the life of the programme. We received 16 progress update reports along the way, so this is really a closed down report that we do for all programmes. It's quite long, I'm obviously not going to go through all of that, but it sets out what the programme set out to achieve, what we've achieved, some of the learning, some of the things that we might do differently next time around. An enormous amount of work has gone in across a whole range of areas. Policy is unrecognisable from where it was before transformation. There's been an awful lot of our kind of key processes that we've improved, we've digitised, or indeed we've stopped doing because we felt that there was sufficient value, and that meant that we were able to do sort of more valuable work. And then in terms of digital, there were some system updates and upgrades, but there's a whole load of sort of digital foundation that came in as part of transformation that building on. And obviously with Tom coming in and him bringing his expertise, he's been able to take that to the next level.
Thank you. Sorry for interrupting, but at least I get to thank you twice. Richard.
Thank you, Chairman. Ian, again, thank you for updating us on the progress made against the last HMI report, and also briefing us about the coming. It's worse than Ofsted. It seems to be a perpetual state inspection at seriously. Could I just hone down more on the progress on the remaining prevention recommendation? I'm also very conscious we just had Lee's report on budget savings this year. And although in strict monetary terms we were yielding more from the crew-based training proposals, he did flag up there was the danger of that impacting upon our station's prevention agenda. Now, I appreciate all of our prevention agenda is not purely related to that, but to what extent, by being focused on these monetary savings, could it lead to a more damning January inspection?
Yeah. I think it's a very fine balance, but ultimately we have to find the savings. We legally have to set a balanced budget. But I think what this is really looking at in terms of that, the recording of what the whole time crews are doing is really about trying to identify where we can be more productive. One doesn't necessarily impact the other. It may be that there may be some of the work that they carry out that we could be doing in a different way, or it might be that technology could help speed up some of those things, which would then mean we could spend that time doing something else, which could be some of that prevention work. So you're right, it is a fine balance, and I guess there is some tension between the two. But I think with efficiencies, it's always about how we do things differently and better.
I accept what you're making, but obviously you have to trust management to actually keep the situation under review, of course.
Thank you, Richard. Our questions, Dan.
Just a quick one, Chair. Again, thank you, Ian, and everyone else who's involved with this work. The progress we've made on this the last 2 years since I've been going through this is I'd say immersive, but it might be an understatement. Just on culture, so we still have the one recommendation that's off track. As we know, culture's an ongoing, it doesn't end, it doesn't stop really, especially if you take Councillor Neddy's comments a second ago. In page 41, the last paragraph, the recommendation one is research has been carried out on a plan to deliver a new recruitment policy by the 31st of August 2025 is being developed and will be initiated at the beginning of July from the new workforce development teams in place. Has that recruitment policy been delivered now, or sure? Or question? Is there anything more that can be said on that, or is that to getting too much into the weeds for this segment?
I think it's not finished just yet. I know it's in training. I don't know exactly when it's going to be published. There were a number of elements to it as well. But I think I can certainly find out if they've done this.
That's currently in draft. So there's some changes to be made and they'll reduce circulation, some comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure we all say that the changes have been somewhat transformational, if you excuse the pun. One just question out of interest really. What's the thinking behind when a firefighter is promoted, they have to be moved?
Yeah, that's really around the cultural piece. I think to ensure that we don't get small pockets of certain cultures, and also from a professional point of view, each fire station poses different risks, so it makes our officers much more rounded by moving to different fire stations and different experiences.
Thanks, Rich. Any other shows? No. Okay. Well, we've been asked to scrutinise the content of the report and make any recommendations or suggestions to support the service in continually improving. So I'm guessing anybody's got any extra suggestions or comments. I think we'll move on. Thank you so very much, Ian. And we now agenda item 9, update on culture change. This is presented by Louisa.
So today's paper is to make any recommendations and suggestions in terms of improving our service culture. So since our last meeting where you sort of looked and scrutinised the people culture leadership strategy. That's now being launched and available on our website, and the people services have restructured as well, and that's been launched. We're really rich with insight at the moment, so the work that we've been doing over the last 3 months is conducting that survey and analysing it, which had a 40% completion rate across our staff. And then we've been running culture workshops and analysing SLV, culture capture conversations. This has all been under a model of frameworks, including psychological safety and culture change models, which has given us really key insights into how to deliver the way forward. So highlighted issues around psychological safety, inconsistent leadership behaviours, and a disconnect with stated values and lived experience. So these findings, along with HMI recommendations, is informing people culture leadership priorities going forward from that strategy, and also that programme of work. So we're making sure that we're kind of careful and aware of everything HMI is telling us, but also mapping it across that leading service, leading service and leading people fire standard. So staff engagement is really important to us throughout. So we have the culture design steering group, which is made up of each staff group, which helps us guide all of this along the way. We've got representatives from all staff groups that have been involved in the workshops, and obviously the culture capture conversations with SMB. And the inclusion team have been working closely with fire control so that they actively own culture, their culture moving forward, and rally the tasks in order to have improved workplace satisfaction. And then, of course, a touchpoint survey, and I think we're getting out there, we're making sure that we really story tell where we're at as a service and the direction that we're moving forward, what the meaning of the people culture leadership strategy is, and make sure that we're always getting that kind of feedback loop. So the next steps is really to finalise those people culture leadership priorities and a culture programme, and we hope to come back with a sort of dashboard so that you can really visualise at the highest level, like where we are with culture. We are looking to make sure that we gather all that evidence ready for the HMI inspection in January. And we're conducting that sort of granular work in working with fire control on a bespoke package, working with empowering managers around leadership engagement. So that's happening right now between October, November and December. We're also developing an connectivity plan to make sure that we're better connected across the service and we all have the same goals when it comes to culture. So that's really it for the paper. As I say, next time we're building those dashboards so that we're able to report to you at that really high level, using some of those frameworks around psychological safety and culture change model.
Yeah. Thanks, Louisa. And sorry, I forgot to ask you, could you just introduce yourself for the video?
Apologies. Louisa Roger, Culture Change Implementation.
Thank you very much. One thing on the touchpoint survey, it's only completed by 40%. How are we going to improve that response?
Yeah, so it was 91% from control, so different staff groups had different percentage response, and then corporate was at 21%, on call was around 32, sorry, hang on, got the numbers right, I think. So what have we got? Yes, 56 from corporate, 21% on call and 32% hold time. So particularly on call and hold times where we feel we need to focus. I think making sure that there's sort of time for on call to be able to complete, and looking at different ways to encourage those completion rates. So we, as a result of that touchpoint survey, and because we didn't have enough from on call, the workshops we focused and we brought together that sort of really more granular insight, particularly from on call. We were able to explain that to our managers and dependent, and was able to plan out the way forward, particularly from the staff groups perspective.
Thank you. Richard?
Louisa, a simple question. Is that touchpoint survey available on the website or just the strategy?
It's just the strategy available.
So, how can we access or can you send it to us?
Yes, absolutely. I can send the report as governors.
We can see that.
Thank you. Robert?
Yeah, just look. I was just looking at the report about the touch point staff survey, and last other thing that says that there is persistent concerns around superintendent leadership communication. I'd like to if we let more information on what exactly those concerns are. I think it's interesting.
Absolutely. So we used a model which enabled us to really kind of gather what the key concerns were, and the decision making was particularly prevalent for operational staff, so people that are not sort of based at headquarters, people that they're not involved in some of the decisions that are being made. And then the concerns around sort of communication and leadership was similarly from sort of all staff groups in terms of how they feel that some of the decisions are top down and not sort of not bottom up. So what we're doing in the programme is we're focusing on the foundations. There was also the lack of clarity around values, and we had sort of two values. We had the core code of ethics, and then we had the service values. So what we're able to do through that insight, we're able to clarify the values, and we're going to be co-creating a behaviour framework around those values, and that insight is telling us that we should be focusing on core code of ethics. And so that's going to be a decision that's made very soon within SLT and moving forward. We're also working on an inclusive leadership programme. So we do inclusive leadership training across the summers, but this is about having a real culture shift, coaching and support for our leaders so that they can really manage and be responsible and leading of that culture change. And we're also putting in a programme around sort of design thinking, so the basis of our people culture and leadership strategy is all about co-creating the future. So we're making sure that managers and individuals who are responsible for people-based projects have all the tools to be able to do that, and understand that it doesn't necessarily have to take a lengthy amount of time to make sure that you're co-creating the solution for those people-based processes in process with our staff. And so we're making sure that those tools are in place, and that will make up part of that 3-year culture programme that we're going now.
If we look at where you want to come in.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just to add to Louisa's response there, obviously the touch point survey, we would love a much bigger response, but to supplement that, we do still continue rotation unit visits. We have an issue as far as our headquarters, obviously, because it is police headquarters work with large majority of our staff can't access the building because they're not vetted. So please, if they can't come to us, then we must go to them. We're all going to carry out regular visits to on-call and hold times, make sure they are better informed, and that was recognised by the election while they revisit. But our comms is much better, and I think importantly there is a culture change within the leadership of the organisation now, where decisions are made, not only communicated well, but before they're made, they're discussed at all levels. So there's a lot more responsibility maybe not the right word, but a lot more consultation being happening at all levels of the organisation before the decisions are made by SLP. It's no longer a case of we make decisions. Because it's a collective before we make any decisions, and that's partly why we've all been doing lots of visits recently around the paper you saw earlier around efficiencies. We're discussing it with staff. We've got a meeting tomorrow with all staff to discuss those, to make sure that everyone's informed and gets their opinion across.
Despite that, people still don't feel that they're included in the simulation anyway.
I think if I can, obviously the touchpoint survey is, by the time we've got it, that's a recent change to our way we work. So I think I'd like to see a much more improved result now than the next survey.
And I have noticed myself that the ACFO's admin chief do spend a lot of their time out of headquarters, in stations, and I think that is a real improvement, being visible and, you know, open to questions, etc.
Cat.
Thanks, Jack. Just again back to the touch point to fill one, at least for people's segments. The on-call fire service stuff. Are we asking them to do it on drill nights, or are we asking them to do it at the right time and claim back the time for doing these surveys, or how does it work? Of course, is that again too much detail for this meeting? It's just, I know it's in the on-call firefighters that I know, it's not the best paid position we have. There can be some clashes, so everyone would want them to be treated as fairly around, so the facilities be surrounded.
So we supplied the touchpoint survey so that you could do it outside work, but the intention was with on-call to provide times within trading time. But still, the kind of time allocation wasn't quite enough. And so I think that's something that we're learning from in order to make sure that we can allocate that time for future surveys. And I think there was an improvement from last year's survey in terms of the numbers across each staff group, but I think there's still improvements that we can make.
Thank you.
And I know that during the original mayoral referendum, the turnout in my ward was 9%, so 40 is not so bad, but obviously needs improvement. Any other questions? Right.
Just very quickly, I was thinking about that as you were saying that, to be honest. We consider within the wards that I'm in that if we get anything above 20% in response to any sort of survey we do, even if we deliver the surveys to every door, and even if we could stand over people and watch them complete that, that's a good result. It's very, very difficult to do any of these sort of surveys and get, you know, a meaningful percentage respondents. So if you've got 90% in some cases, that's transformational, really.
Thank you, Ron. Any other questions, queries? Oh, sorry, Paul.
Thank you, Chair. It's really just to follow on from some of those comments around decision-making, leadership and communication. And I think we recognise we have got areas we can improve on. We are a learning organisation, and we are trying to put processes, methodologies in place to improve things like engagement and communication, so that people feel part of that decision-making. But it is all interlinked. And one thing we need to work on is ensuring people know which mechanisms are available. So we do have opportunities for people to give feedback and improvement ideas. We are commencing a connectivity plan, so a series of engagements. We are doing the station visits. I know it's not working, but I think we just need to build on that communication. It was just to offer a bit of overarching assurance as well, and I just want to wait until the last 3 presenters have finished, because I do recognise it does seem that some of our programmes might be off track or a little bit behind with some of them. And so one of the things we have put in place as a service is the Programme Management Office, which really sort of came to the forefront around like the 1st of April when we commenced with the Portfolio Directorate. And that's an area or function that we really build upon. And moving forward, we do hope that that will help give us our assurance around the programmes, because it's increasing our scrutiny, it's increasing our governance, and increasing oversight, but also connecting the dots. So it's allowing us to make those connections between the programmes, increase efficiencies, reduce duplication, and hopefully build on those lessons learned. So I appreciate it's a bit of a catch rule, but I really appreciate, I think, taking these things in isolation and maybe doesn't give that bigger picture of all the work that is going on. So we will continue to keep it, improve it and build on the good work we're trying to do.
Thank you, Paula. And I have to say that this is taken so seriously. I mean, your appointment has, with the portfolio transformation, I think that, you know, we're not just ticking the boxes, we are changing things for the better. And not resting on our laurels at any point either. So thank you for that. Questions?
So,
Okay, well the recommendations are that we scrutinise the content of this paper and make any recommendations or suggestions to support the service in improving culture. And I think we've done that. So we'll move on to agenda item 10. Thank you. Verity is going to present on this one the 2025-26 revenue budget long-term report as at 31st of August 2025.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, the work paper starts on page 87 of your bundles. It is the first time we are reporting to you on the performance against the 25-26 revenue budget. We will be looking at spend for the first 5 months of the year up to the 31st of August 2025, and then the expected outturn position following that for the full year. There's one appendix paper on page 91 which shows you the full budget breakdown with the variances against the revised budget position. The background of this paper, paragraphs 3.1 and 3.2, just really walk through the history of the revenue budget for 25-26, as we obviously had a budget approved in February, but we did bring back 2 subsequent versions to the full authority for approval. One because we hadn't updated, or a late receipt of a grant letter, so we had to update the budget for that information. And this, the final version of the budget, which was a balanced budget, was presented to members at the AGM on the 30th of June, and that's the version that we're comparing to today. Financial implications at the bottom of page 4, paragraph 4.1 highlights the good news that at the moment we're tracking around 100k underspend. I will highlight that we are holding 500k for the efficiency and savings that we talked about earlier. So in theory what this is saying is we could drop 100,000 of that, and we're just under 400,000 still to go in terms of tracking, which is where I was saying those numbers don't quite align to the numbers that we see in the efficiency and savings paper, because there's lots of other moving parts as well. Moving on to section 5. I won't go through every single bit in detail, but these just pick out some of the high-level movements that you see across the various costs. Income. Income we're holding in line with budget at the moment. There's no indication that we're going to have any kind of significant variances there at this point in time. Employee costs, the next section down, they make up around 80% of our total cost for the service. They are quite significant. Overall, at the moment, they're looking at around 100k overspend. There are some movements across this, some of the lines are under, some of them are over. The way we forecast for employee costs is we're looking at year-to-date spend and kind of extrapolating that going forward, and we have seen some higher levels of overtime in places like hold time and control for various reasons. So it means that hopefully we're over-forecasting for the full year, and we'll see that reduce as we've brought we've completed a number of pieces of work in control, for example, that have reduced the need for overtime in that area, so it should help to bring that full year forecast down. In terms of premises and transport costs, overall across the two, we're about £88,000 underspent there. A lot of that is in car allowances. And within supplies and services, we're again around £100,000 underspent. Again, many moving parts in there, a few ups and a few downs, particularly overspends on the fees and services line at the moment. But then underspends on other areas, for example, other supplies and services, where we're looking at underspends on subscriptions. And IT as well, we're seeing a few underspends there where we're trying to maximise and kind of make sure we get the most out of the contracts, so we've got to consolidate the IT provision that we have. In terms of other costs, so this is the bottom section of the revenue budget, we're holding this in line with budget at the moment, so it means we're holding the expectation that capital financing costs will be just under £1 million for the year. When we come on to my next table, we'll see that actually I'm hoping that that will be lower, and we'll be able to drop some of that down because borrowing's reduced, or delayed really, it's not reduced, it's delayed, so we're likely to take out less borrowing this year and hopefully see a little bit of a saving there, which will help us to continue to realise savings and balance the budget across the year. Similarly for reserves, we don't make transfers to and from reserves generally during the year because they will take to that as a year-end review. So again, we're assuming they will all happen as per budget, and we'll take a view on that as the year progresses. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Verity. Questions, Richard?
Verity, again, thank you for this. I'm trying to marry your report with Appendix 1. Have I misread it? Whilst on the cost of full-time firefighters, there is currently a significant overspend. I thought, according to Appendix 1, by the end of the year we had a surplus of 85. Is that right or wrong?
The 85 is an overspend.
Right.
So the positives are overspends, the negatives are good news. So the negatives are an underspend. What I'm saying is that hopefully as the year progresses, our expectation of full year profits will reduce, and then it will bring that overspend down.
It was just obvious. The second thing, 2 weeks ago, at the meeting at Kempsham, looking for financial options for the next 3 years, I thought the chief officer mentioned there would be a decision about pensions, which might dictate whether some people went earlier than they planned. When is that likely to happen?
I'm not a pension expert, but there is lots of, Rich might be able to come in a minute. There's lots going on with pension remedy, and we have got a number of firefighters that could retire at any point in time that haven't chosen to yet because of the uncertainty around that remedy position. So I'm not sure if we know dates around when that might be resolved.
So the pension remedy is going through currently. We've actually got a meeting this afternoon looking at those figures. But actually the figures, the number of staff who could retire is actually relatively low for us. And those that many of the number we've got, who actually they've got either over age 55 or they've got 30-year service, but they've not really got both. And that's the critical point that you'll need. So it's certainly not as bad as it might be.
Thank you, Rich. Any other questions?
Right.
Okay. There's recommendation.
So Jeff,
Sorry,
just very quick one for Rich on that. So Dan, as I know, is late 60s now, and he's a Hong Kong and has like 45 years service, should be with England. It'd be good just a future date to hear about what that is like those members was keen.
So they'll fit under the Matthews 2 remedy, but more than happy to discussion outside of the meeting with you maybe at some point. It's not a short discussion.
And pensions was the reason why 7 firefighters who drove the trucks with me had to end their journey in Moldova because the Foreign and Commonwealth Office says you should go to Ukraine at the moment, and they risked losing their pension, which would be a horrendous thing, although Ralphie's already threatened to come back with millions and so it would be nice if we could get some dispensation for aid convoys if you
So say, luckily you, Chair, you didn't receive a pension, so there wasn't enough issue.
Yeah, no. In fact, I generally can't get health insurance because of my time in intensive care. But strangely enough, in Ukraine, I could get insurance at €3.50 a day, which covered me for £100,000 of medical costs and death benefits as well. So Deb's insisted I'd strangely enough, just in case, Any other questions on this? Okay. Well, we are asked to review the actual spend and full-year forecast against spending position against the 2025-26 revenue budget shown in Appendix 1. And I think we've got that. So we can move on in its verity again. Agenda item 11 is the 2025-26 capital programme update as at 31st of August 2025 to include balance sheet and quarterly update on prudential and treasury management indicators. And I think that's the longest item title I've ever had, but verity.
Thank you. Apologies, it is a mouthful. We changed this paper last year actually, so last year was the first time we started to report the balance sheet, the prudential and treasury management indicators, which is why it became longer than just the capital programme. So So this paper, similarly to the revenue budget paper, is the first time we'll be looking at capital programme in comparison to the 25-26 budget. This again will be looking at actuals up to the end of August and then a full year forecast based on those actuals. There are 3 appendices to this paper. The first appendix is showing the current position on the capital programme. The second is a summary balance sheet as at 31st of August. And the third is a review of the Treasury and Prudential Treasury Management indicators. By way of background, at the bottom of page 93, paragraph 3.1, this just outlines how the capital programme has moved since the original programme was approved. So we brought the original capital programme to full fire authority in February for approval. We did bring a subsequent updated version to the fire authority AGM on the 30th of June to take into account the outturn for the prior year. So it was just really looking at rephasing spend as a result of the outturn for 24-25. So when we're looking at Appendix 1, we are comparing to the revised capital programme, so that capital programme taking into account how 24-25 ended up. Moving on to page 94, and I'll move down to the key considerations section. So this section really talks about the key movements and the key spends we've had during the year so far. Again, I won't go through each of them in detail, but I will just pick up on premises and fleet because they're the ones that have got the largest spend and the largest movements in spend. So premises is by far our largest element of the capital programme, and mainly because of the significant work we have planned on the Bath station. We have looked to rephase just under £2 million of spend for the Bath project. So there's been a delay in terms of the Bath project and the progress there. So when we're looking at a full year outturn, we are expecting the capital programme this year to spend a lower number than.
I was a cabinet member for housing in Bristol. I say to Ian, my then housing director, stop to Humphrey Ian, say it in English. And I must say, although it's familiar to Nick, perhaps more professionally involved, bariatric rescues I had to Google to see it, the concept. Can we actually say dealing with the obese? Are we afraid of actually challenging people? But seriously, do we know what's increased year on year or over several years of this? And probably less likely, do we know the estimated cost, additional cost to the fire authority?
Estimated cost is a challenging one. I do have the figures of the numbers of incidents mapped out over the last couple of years, and again I can share that with you. I haven't got it to hand. The cost is a challenging one. Those incidents sometimes can be quite protracted and resource intensive. But not always, does depend on the individual circumstances. As for the terminology, apologies for not explaining that. Bariatrics, the medical term used, it's not just people who are classified as obese, it would also be someone who's just particularly heavy, so I think the threshold we have is 20 stone. But we do occasionally use the bariatric equipment for individuals who are under or around that threshold, usually due to the circumstances around rescuing them. If it's particularly challenging extraction, we may use the bariatric equipment, even if that individual is not medically bariatric.
Thank you for that. I'm very conscious, for example, it's calls of the ambulance service who have to invest in huge sums of money, taxpayers' money, to replace ambulances. I'm concerned if it's having that sort of impact on the fire service.
Thank you, Richard. Going back to electric vehicles and asking the operational officers alongside me, I think one of the options is to literally smother it with a blanket. Is that right? There's a special blanket to put on the car. And if there is, how on earth would we do that as a bus?
Big blanket.
Good, easy questions. Yes, there is maintenance that will cover cars. However, what that doesn't do, as Natalie alluded to earlier, is it doesn't prevent damage to the road underneath. So we could still, you know, if it's on the M5, we could still end up with quite a significant disruption with the closure of the motorway. As far as a bus is concerned, then I'm not aware of a blanket that's big enough to cover a bus, but it's certainly something we can look into, Chair, and I can come back to you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, it's a bit of an off-the-wall question. Dan?
Possibly not an answer for Scott and Natalie. It's good to hear Yes Minister reference it. I think last day everyone was 5, so I'm not sure everyone in the room will get the one, but it's good to know it's still relevant. Just to coincide a few different things on the agenda, budget shortfall and planning. I know we asked for contributions to hydrants and other things when we actually go to planning. Is there capacity to ask for actual contributions to the budget beyond or budget shortfalls in things like just say over residential buildings over 10 properties or residential buildings over a certain height, because it does require extra work for us. And what's the I'm sure it comes from central government, not to be political in any way, but if you just give me an answer on that, so I can get this thought out of my mind.
I very much like your idea, Councillor. And if there's any way you could convince the government that we could impose that, then I think that'd be marvellous. But certainly, unless Ferry is aware of anything, that's not within our gift to be able to do that.
I can't imagine anyone there listening to less than me could possibly get
The only thing I would add is we get a revenue support grant from the central government, and that is weighted. So there's a big pot of money that is then distributed across all the services, and it's weighted for each service dependent on your service area. So if you've got coastline deprivation, things like that. So our funding is meant to target and provide us with sufficient funding to be able to deal with the area that we have, but I don't think it's as specific as kind of specific types of buildings and things. But they have been reviewing that formula recently and the data that feeds into it for the next financial year of funding.
Thank you.
And in terms of tall buildings, is there a limit to how high we can go?
From a fire service point of view, well, no, it all will come within building regulations, really. As we know, there are buildings in the country of 60 plus floors. That will then depend, they will be limited to their fixed installations, and the firefighting installations and fires. But other than that, there's no jurisdiction from us, other than the system inside the building. And if I was quickly to go back to your point there, obviously, as far as funding, is the more homes that are built, the more council tax are paid. So therefore, that reflects in our funding. However, it's still not enough.
Thank you, Robert.
Talking about the new proposed housing developments, and the one I know a little bit about is Banmore. And the construction of the Banmore bypass will open up a lot of housing developments in that area. It does strike me that Parksville area is inside North Somerset. We don't really seem to have a lot of cover. There's a couple of on-call fire stations in that area, but generally, if you look at the map, there's a big hole of cover in that area. So it just concerns me slightly that if there's going to be a lot of housing development in that area, will we have the adequate cover for it?
Obviously, that is part of the team, the CRMP, the work the CRMP team do as far as our risk management. We do have, as you'll be aware, windscreen breakdown and Gatton there. But that's also part of the reason that at Western, there are 2 whole-time appliances and an on-call. So we'll apply to back up to the facility on-call appliances. If the risk changes in that area, then or how we address that risk needs to change, but that's a firm the ongoing thing that the team will be looking at.
Thank you. Ron?
I think it may be a question for somewhere other than this forum to be looking at infrastructure on new developments. Clearly, one of the issues that central government and local government has is that when giving planning permission for a new development of any size, you have to consider the infrastructure. But sadly, it's not necessarily a part of planning permission. The infrastructure should be there. It can often be a recommendation. There's often still money as well. But developers will give us a certain amount of money to improve the environment, i.e. roads, etc. But they won't give it to us for free. It won't be for an extra fire station. It won't be for an ambulance station, etc. So sadly, it's
Speed things up a little. So thank you very much for the report on that. We are recommendations. We are asked to consider the service plan 2024 to 2028 updates provided and the emerging community risks findings and key themes identified to date in this report. And I think we've done that. So we will now, thanks for your contribution. We'll now go backwards to the annual environment report, agenda item 12. I think Louise and Patrick are going to present on this, so if I can ask you to just introduce yourself before you give the report.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Patrick, I'm the head of estates. Louise is our new environmental manager. So joined the team a while ago, but moved into the manager's role only earlier this year. So it's Louise's first PRC. I'll be doing the majority of the talking. Louise will be chipping in for a section just to get her familiar with the environment. So we're here today to present the annual environmental report for the financial year 24-25. This is an annual report, so it's an update on last year's. In terms of carbon reduction and our progress against our net zero target, we are now have achieved a 55% reduction in carbon emissions from our buildings and fleet compared to our baseline. That puts us on target against the target that we've currently set. And in terms of the breakdown on that, our estate is currently accounting for 2% of those reported carbon emissions due to our green gas and electricity agreements that are in place through Bristol City Council, which is how we purchase our energy. And in terms of the estate, all our new fire stations are targeting BREEAM Very Good or Excellent standards, so we're baking that in, and net zero standards in operation as well. Over the last year, our solar panels continue to provide benefit to the service in terms of cost avoidance, and we did manage to generate 21% of the energy that was utilised across the service through those solar panels. And we're continuing to explore next targeted sites ahead for future investment to increase that percentage. For our fleet, we continue to expand our low emission fleet, predominantly in our sort of grey and support fleet area rather than our response. We're now also trialling HVO as a fuel source, so that's an alternative fuel source and is a byproduct of the food industry. Those trials are ongoing. We have started them, they're not conclusive yet, however we've got a reasonable amount of confidence that it should work for most of our diesel vehicles, but not all. And there are, sort of in the last few months, there have been a few reports into the ethical sourcing of HVO as well, so that's something that we're really cognizant around, making sure that the supply chain that we select to supply that fuel is an ethical source for that if we're going to make the switch. Aside from HVO, however, the challenges surrounding the fleet are likely to continue. mainly based on the fact that the predominant diesel users in our fleet are HGVs. There are fire services, particularly London, who are currently trialling electric fire appliances. However, that solution is still looking to be multiple years away, and realistically, in terms of cost pressure, there is a significant uplift in cost for an electric vehicle versus a internal combustion engine. So we'll continue to monitor that situation, I think, is where we stand at the moment, and hopefully that the HVO trials will support an interim position on decarbonising that aspect of our fleet. In terms of day-to-day operations this year, there was an update to the waste recycling legislation, which provided an emphasis on food recycling. We've now fully embedded that in the service. Food recycling is on track, and we're monitoring that to make sure that we're not contaminating our other waste streams with the food waste going forward. In terms of overall progress, the service continued to demonstrate its leadership in environmental management, including the removal of fluorinated firefighting foam stored on sites now almost being complete. So we've got one last stockpile to be removed. We're also continuing with our ongoing investigations into historic contamination at our sites as well from fluorinated firefighting foams. We've embedded the new simpler recycling legislation and continued with our consistent communications across the organisation with local groups that we engage with and with national partners as well on our environmental aspects. Environmental considerations are also now included within every impact assessment, which happens for any change the services is proposing, and responsible procurement continues to be embedded as well. So Louise to cover our strategic aims.
Yeah, so our strategic aims for the environmental strategy, we continue to make progress against all of the outstanding items. Most are either on track or completed. There's a small number that are either amber or red. Some of those are due to recent resource challenges within the team, not having a manager for a number of months. One of those, it was in planned that a biodiversity plan will be in place for all sites by 2023. This is still planned and not yet complete, but it is being developed over the next year alongside partners and the landscape contract. Our target of new build projects being operational net zero from 2020 remains in progress. It's on track and will remain handled until the current new builds are completed. Our aim for 30% of the fleet being low or ultra emission by 2026 is still amber. As Patrick mentioned earlier, our present replacement programme won't meet those aims at this time, partly due to the cost pressures on the service, and that we have got decarbonisation plan going ahead soon. And finally, the only red item that we have is our aim to achieve ISO 14001 accreditation. Currently, our environmental management system is in line with ISO 14001, but due to the costs involved in having official accreditation at the moment, we are not going down that route, but we are looking into ways of auditing internally so that we can make sure that we still are in line with that.
So just to summarise, overall, presently the service continues to make positive steps and works towards reducing and managing our environmental impact. It should be noted, however, that reports into the future are now likely to see a slowing of improvements, predominantly based on the fleet challenges that we face. We are also anticipating in the next couple of years that we will need to start reporting on Scope 3 emissions. So presently our carbon reporting just focuses on Scope 1 and 2, which is our direct operational carbon emissions. Scope 3 will bring into the picture our supply chain's carbon emissions. That will likely result in the carbon emission report increasing. and we'll need to sort of focus on that as a further stream of work. We'll likely then start reporting on broken down streams just to make it clear what the impact is on scopes 1, 2 and 3. And also now that we've signed into those agreements with Bristol's Council around the provision of our green gas and green electricity, we'll more start to report more closely on utilisation of energy rather than carbon equivalents of that, just so that we're still focused on reducing as a primary method our energy consumption, and we don't take sort of pressure off on making those improvements across the service. And finally, just to say that we're continuing to explore further ways in which we can fund the improvements in terms of grant funding and alternative funding models. Most people should hopefully be aware that the government's PSDS decarbonisation fund is now closed, and there isn't currently any advice on what's coming to replace that. So we'll keep an eye out and hope to utilise that when it becomes available again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Rob first?
Yeah, kind of 3 points really, Patrick. Thanks, that was an excellent presentation. Your comments on solar power, which is really good and not unexpected. I made a fortune this year out of solar power. It comes as no surprise at all. And my question there is: are there any plans for further solar implementation? In addition, you spoke about diesel HGVs, and I assume that you've considered recycled vegetable oil and the sort of good things that the buses are doing, and maybe even gas, or investigation into alternatives, and maybe with similar organisations, for the blind and other things. Just confirm that you're doing that. And you spoke about ISO 14001. Great, really good to be accredited. We don't need to be accredited. There's no requirement to be accredited. We're not selling to anybody. It doesn't need to be accredited. It's a much better idea to demonstrate your compliance to yourself on an internal auditing basis and make sure that you're fully compliant, and you would be. And there's always a possibility of bringing an accredited assessor in just to confirm that we would comply. But there is no reason to be accredited unless you actually need to use it, and it costs a fortune. I've done that assessment. Okay, that's all.
Thank you. So I'll address the solar point and then I'll pass on to Louise to talk about HGVs and the HVO situation. So in terms of solar, we are planning further expansion of solar, and we're baking that in with our major capital work. So where we're doing the works to Bath and to Weston, we will be introducing solar to those 2 sites. Separately, we have had a heat decarbonisation plan done for the entire estate, and that's looked at which sites have got the best opportunity for solar going forward. I'm still digesting that information at the moment and coming up with a plan. We have in the NTFP allowed for an amount of money for decarbonisation over the next few years. So some of that funding will be pointed towards that solar as an opportunity for us to not just reduce our energy, but also help with the budget situation that we have as well. So I'll pass over to Louise to talk about HGVs.
So for the HVO, which is the hydrotreated vegetable oil, which we're currently trialling, that is the only current option we have really that will fit within the vehicles that we have without any major amendments. So it is a drop-in fuel, so it can be used in most diesel vehicles that are over Euro 6. So we are trialling it we trialled it with one of our newer vehicles, and it's been a really good trial. We're in the process of trialling it with some of the older vehicles to see whether it has the same, if it performs in the same way, and we will then move forward with that if it does. It won't go in with our vehicles, but it will hopefully go in the majority. And we are obviously keeping our eyes open for any other additional innovations that come forward with fuel. But given that we can't replace engines or vehicles at this time, HVO is our best option at the moment.
Rich?
Sorry, just kind of to confirm that the HVO, if I remember rightly, it reduces our carbon emissions by about 80%. It's a massive difference.
That's not true.
There is that. Sausages.
Yeah.
The electric fire engines have been mentioned, and I think when I asked about this last time, I was told that it was something in the region of £1 million an engine, which is 3 or 4 times the cost of a normal engine. So obviously we won't be doing that, unfortunately, until in the future. Dan?
You beat me to it. So I'm just going to say, were those figures still correct? So the £1 million to 240 approximate thousand for traditional fire engine, and do we build in the lifetime of that product as well? So obviously fuel costs would be less, maintenance would be less, obviously, because there's not an engine, but that's a big gap, isn't it, to make up? But it'd just be good to know what the gap is over the lifetime.
Yeah, I think at the moment we're focusing on making sure others do that R&D for us and do the proof of concept. Given the position that we're in and making best use of public money, I think we'll wait for those results. Realistically, to bring down kind of the manufacturing cost, the actual price tag of those vehicles as well, we need to be looking at kind of a wholesale UK fire sector all agreeing that we're going in that direction at the same time, which I don't think is currently there. So maybe if that comes about, the cost per unit could come down, but yeah, we'll wait and see for now.
And the fire engines are still quite bespoke, aren't they? We can almost went to the I think Escape were having an example of how different people, all of them differently compared to if they're doing bariatrics, they're doing different things as well. It's a tricky one to resolve.
Yeah, they are bespoke, and the beauty of it is we can design to address whatever risk we have for our service, which obviously varies across the country, but yeah.
Thank you. And we saw a variety of different fire engines, obviously, in the different fire services we stayed with across Europe, and they all sort of specify in different ways. One of the things I noticed is generally their fire engines are taller, so that they can store more, but obviously we've got restrictions when it comes to the size of our doors. But we also saw what I think is possibly the smallest fire engine ever, which was a 3-wheeler. We managed to get around for you in front of it, just about. It was, tiny little thing.
I saw the photos.
Okay, any other questions? No? One other thing, heat network. Are any of our stations in range of the Bristol heat network?
Yes, so Temple's linked up to the heat network.
Good, okay. So we are asked to scrutinise the contents of this report. We've done that, so thank you very much, Patrick and Louise. And we will move now, skipping forward to agenda item 14, which is an update on the 7-part PFI priority programme. Patrick's going to present on this one as well.
So this report is now going to be a kind of feature of PLC going forward, which is just an update on progress against 7-part. Over the last month, we've held our first contract expiry group meeting. Actually, we held our second one last week since writing this paper. So the contract expiry group looks to bring together the 3 services and Babcock into a room purely to talk about exit rather than business as usual. The key actions arising from that currently, the first being written agreements from all of the services on their plans post PFI exit. We as a service have now drafted our letter to the other 2 services. I'm working in partnership at the moment with NICTA, which is the government's MHCIG's basically partner in assurance on PFIs. So I've sent them the draft letter just to make sure that they're comfortable that it covers and is legally binding as far as it can be in terms of its aims. So I'm hoping to hear back from them in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll start the process of serving those letters to the other two services and hopefully responses back as well. Verbally, both of the other two fire chiefs have confirmed that they will provide those letters, that their intent very much is still to leave Seven Park. So we do have some comfort. We're just aiming to get that in writing to seal it. Further key action has been for the contract expiry group to nominate project managers to work on kind of a working group basis, which we've now done, and we're due to meet week after next for our first meeting. In terms of programme, we now have a programme consultant on board. We've now met with all of the stakeholders across the service that they need to in terms of putting together the programme for our exit process and for the exploration of the future of Seven Park. I'm expecting that they will deliver that programme to us by the end of November 2025, and that will set out the critical path and the key actions that we need to undertake to get us from where we are today all the way through to occupying the site post-April 2028. Moving on to design and staff engagement, we've also engaged a workplace consultant. Their role is to identify the needs of the service in terms of the buildings going on into the future, to help us set out the design principles for the building, and to make sure that we understand how the building is going to be used, and therefore the most efficient utilisation of it going forward, to make sure that we're making the most of that asset when it comes to the service. We're planning on staff engagement survey going out towards the end of October. And also we've got staff workshops with heads of department and SLB planned in to influence the discussions as well around what we need from that building. We've also established just before our last meeting the Seven Park steering group. The steering group is made up of representatives from pretty much every department across the service, making sure that we're making decisions in a joined up way and that we're, again, progressing in the right direction. Next steps over the next period before the next PLC meeting, I'm expecting that the programme consultant will produce their initial programme for consultation and refinement, and that we will have gone through that process. That the workplace consultant will have carried out the staff survey and the occupation survey of our current HQ, which actually concluded yesterday, and that the contract expiry group will meet to confirm with legal binding the option that each service will take beyond the end of the PFI agreement. In terms of risk, you'll now see that on the corporate risk register, CR19 also contains a risk that relates to lack of planning for Seven Park to come our way, and for a lack of planning around headquarters facilities, as we know that the police wish to service notice and house out of HQ. We've got plans anyway to move, but it's just that sort of burning platform in terms of needing to make a decision around HQ as well. And that is the end of my summary of the report.
Thank you, Patrick. And I've just written a letter of invitation actually to the fire service. We're hoping to host the chief and one of the water rescuers to come and have a look at Seven Park and see if it can be used for training some of their firefighters in the future. Questions, Dan?
Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for your report. It was mentioned at FOG, I'm sure Assistant Chief Dan's probably going to discuss with me that some resource may be offered from Ministry. Dyslexia kicks in here, so Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. I think NFCC possibly offered some resource around this as well, because another service is also going for a similar. I think we might be the first one to exit a PFI, but I think it's the Cornwall. Is it Cornwall possibly going for it as well? Okay, my memory is not quite as bad as I think it is. Just for my info, do we know the total of what this PFI contract is actually going to cost when we get to the end of the whole course of the lifetime of the contract? I've not been around that long, so I just wanted to know what the totals are in the end of it, really.
Yeah, so I do have that available, however not with me right now, so I'll bring it to the next, I'll make a note and make sure it's in the next update report. In terms of the NISTA support as well from NHCLG, I met with them 2 weeks ago now. Overall, so far, really positive relationship with them, and I'm hopeful that they're going to support us quite well.
That's great to hear. So I've worked on their primary steel products, not this scale, but that device doesn't come cheap. My experience.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you, Matt.
Done. Okay, thank you for that, Patrick. Yeah, we were asked the recommendations on the note the contents of this report and make recommendations or suggestions to support the branch program. And we've done that. Jeff, please. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item 15, which is the government pension scheme pension discretion today. I did get some news today actually that they're going to reinstate the local government pension scheme for councillors. Where did it? Which will be too late for some of us. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, Nicola is going to present on this report.
Hi.
Yes, proceeding.
Right, good afternoon. So I'll take it that you've read the report and you've seen the appendices as part of the discretionary document. Obviously Robin Gage here with you today, he is our future advisor, so if there's any sort of technical questions on anything, then hopefully we'll be able to assist in helping to answer these questions. So, in summary, the report seeks the approval of the following 524 proposals for the use of various discretions set out in for local government pension schemes. The committee is requested to adopt the discretions to enable them to be considered in the future. Now, also you see it's quite a short report now. So the background to the scheme, for the purpose of delivering government pension schemes, the file authority, as the scheme manager, is empowered to make decisions in respect to the schemes. The schemes contain a number of discretions which the scheme manager may exercise, and a decision is required as to whether and to what extent the authority will adopt the discretions. As you probably know, Avon kind of administer the local government pension scheme for required service. So the key considerations, so Appendix 1 details each of the mandatory discretions where an employer policy is required and provides analysis of the meaning of each discretion. There is a requirement for the authority to endorse the discretions as our current dynamic base. The Avon Pension Fund would actually consider processing should we request for the government pension scheme members. This includes requests for flexible retirement under the Rule of 85, so other things like requests for early release of pension benefits following half retirements. So at the moment we don't have an up-to-date discretion policy in place because the one that currently have predates the changes in 2014. So I just understand that. I'm going to do one of the legal things to change it was obviously Avon Rescue Service is under a legal duty to and publish a written statement of policy relating to discretionary powers under various regulations that apply to the local government pension scheme. So like I said, the report's quite short, and the review for the discretion should they be adopted is 12 weeks from August 2025.
Requested. Thank you. I've been asked just to add onto the recommendations. To approve the discretions listed in the appendices to the report, and they review annually. Does that sound like a meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Questions? This is fascinating with pensions. Normally, I did expect you to jump in there. Hopefully not.
Chair, I think we were all just shocked to hear that we might be getting a pension.
Well, some of them might get a pension.
If you're under it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've done 9 years, and so I came in almost exactly as it finished. Yeah. Okay, so we'll move on to the last report. Oh, sorry, we do have to, you guys, Mr. Beck, we do have to approve the get back to it. Wait. We asked to approve the discretions listed in the appendices to this report, so we'll need a vote on that. I will propose, seconded, please. Thank you. All those in favour? Yeah, that's better. So yeah, now. Which TAC is going to present. It is to agree and monitor the procurement forward ban 250k to 1 million as at 23rd of September 2025. Is that all it is? Oh, okay. That's brilliant. Okay, Tanya.
Another safe one. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, here as usual for the spreadsheet that indicates what procurement projects are on the horizon or have been approved already, completed. You'll have seen a couple of things been completed and since I last saw you. Anything in yellow is more likely to come to this meeting in the future. Otherwise, it's the usual list, I think. If you have any particular questions on anything, I'll try and answer.
Thank you, nice to see you again. Any questions? That's it, you go off scot-free on that. Well done, and it's been a bit of a marathon, so thank you all. And I know that our next meeting is scheduled for 5 minutes away, but we hopefully may be able to put that back. So the date of the next meeting is Thursday the 29th of January 2026 at 10:30 hours, and that is Waterloo Street in the Western Supermare. It's been so thanks everyone.